Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at noon, divers battle rough currents and poor visibility to search for more than 90 passengers believed still trapped in the sunken Sewol-ho ferry as the death toll hits 210. North Korea appears to be weighing up the diplomatic and economic consequences of a fourth nuclear test, but a U.S. expert believes Pyongyang is not fully prepared for one yet. Plus, economic indicators in the manufacturing sector support the central bank's projection that the domestic economy is returning to a normal growth track. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Wednesday, April 30th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in live from Seoul. I'm Ju.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start with the latest updates regarding the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. The number of confirmed dead has now surpassed the 200 mark 2 weeks after the sinking. As of Wednesday morning, more than 90 people remain unaccounted for.
More bodies were retrieved overnight despite poor tidal and weather conditions at the accident site. For more on this and other updates, let's now connect live to our Connie Lee at the News Center. Connie, fill us in on the latest.
Hey, Jinju and Mark. Well, the total number of people confirmed dead stands at 210 this Wednesday afternoon. Search officials and divers retrieved a dozen bodies late Tuesday, and early this morning, 5 more bodies were recovered. Officials say most of the victims were found in the lobby of the 5th floor of the sunken ferry, or an area that was not expected to have that many passengers. What we do know is that most of the retrieved bodies were male students from Tanwon High School, or where most of the passengers were from. As of now, search officials say they've gone through more than half of the 64 rooms or compartments where the missing passengers are believed to be. There are 92 people still unaccounted for.
Connie, you said most of the passengers were found on the 5th floor, an area where they didn't expect to find anyone. Why do officials think divers found a lot of bodies there?
Well, as you remember, Mark, the search and recovery process mostly focused on the 4th floor because most of the students from Tanwon High School stayed in cabins on that floor. But officials themselves were surprised to see many bodies on the lobby's 5th floor. And according to the commander of the recovery operation, he thinks the bodies found in the lobby were of students from the floor below.
As the water started coming in, instinctively, the students probably rushed to the upper floor.
And looking at a mock-up blueprint of the lobby, the ship actually, the lobby, or where most of the latest bodies were found, is right by the stairwell. So it does make sense that students who were inside their cabins on the 4th floor tried to escape the waters rushing in by making their way up the stairs and onto the 5th floor. But unfortunately, they were not able to get out. Officials say they have now expanded their search area to look at that floor more intently.
It's just awful to imagine the terror those students must have felt in those last moments. Now, this tragedy could have possibly been avoided as they had enough time to escape. And I hear the families of the victims have issued a statement.
Right, and actually a representative of the parents who lost their children in the ferry released a statement early today asking the public to no longer feel sorry for them. And for those people who have apologized for the disaster, including some of the ferry's crew and even President Park Geun-hye, the families say they want action and not just apologies from those involved. Also, for those who want to help these affected families financially, they actually want all the funds to go to a scholarship program and a memorial park that will be installed in honor of the students.
Yes, lots of money being raised, and it's nice to see that the money will go to a good cause and a memorial that will remember the victims forever. Now, what's the latest on the criminal investigation ongoing involving the crew members?
Well, as you know, all 15 surviving crew members responsible for navigating the ferry are in custody and are facing charges, including negligence and abandoning passengers. And today, investigators are now looking into phone logs between the crew on the sinking ferry and the ferry's employer, the Cheongjin Marine Company. Prosecutors say that multiple crew members on that ferry communicated about 7 times by phone with employer officials when the ship was listing. Now, the first call was was made around 9 a.m., just minutes after the ferry reported its first distress call to Coast Guards. And the last call by a crew member to its employer was made around 9:40 a.m. Investigators are looking into why the calls were made and what the conversations were about. And that's all I have for you right now from the News Center. Back to you, Chinju and Mark.
Thank you very much, Connie. Now, the Sewol-ho ferry tragedy and the government response has public officials, including the president herself, taking a long look in the mirror.
To make sure the nation is prepared for the event of future crises, President Park Geun-hye has ordered the establishment of a control tower whose sole purpose would be to manage and coordinate disaster responses. Arirang News Ji Myung-kil has more.
Public distrust of the government has grown considerably over the past couple of weeks over its handling of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. To more effectively deal with future crises, President Park Geun-hye announced yesterday that a new ministry will be launched under the purview of the Prime Minister's office. This new body will serve as a control tower in the event of an emergency.
새로 만들어지는 국가안전처는 대응팀을 만들어 평시 훈련하고 만에 하나 사고가 나면 즉시 전문팀을 파견해서 현장에서 사고에 대응토록 해야 할 것입니다.
The president said the new body would handle any number of disasters and accidents, ranging from chemical leaks and oil spills to issues with telecommunication networks or power supplies. The envisioned ministry will consist of experts, including foreigners who specialize in crisis management and disaster response, and they'll be given the authority to train and deploy special forces in emergency situations. President Park's proposal will be included in a revised bill on restructuring the government, which is to be discussed at the National Assembly. In February, the president instructed the Ministry of Security and Public Administration to establish up a nationwide system to manage disasters and emergencies, but it failed to come up with an effective one. President Park has lashed out at government officials in recent days, who she said are responsible for failing to properly manage the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, the nation's worst maritime tragedy in decades. Ji Myung-kil, Arirang News.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broom and Jin-ju.
I'm Jin-ju.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
A day after North Korea fired off 50 heavy artillery shells just north of its maritime border with South Korea, the United States spoke out, calling on Pyongyang to stop a string of provocations. The next one could come in the form of a nuclear test, and some experts say that even though a fourth nuclear test is highly likely, it isn't imminent. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The press secretary of the Pentagon, John Kirby, called on North Korea on Tuesday to stop its provocations that are stirring up tensions on the Korean peninsula. Kirby's comments came in response to North Korea's live fire drill near the de facto maritime border with South Korea in the West Sea on Tuesday, during which 50 heavy artillery shells were fired. It was the latest in a string of provocative acts from north of the border. The larger question, though, is what's next? The speculation is that the North will conduct a fourth nuclear test in the near future, but determining when is another story. Despite thorough analysis of several commercial satellite images, Joel Witt, a senior fellow with the U.S.-Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University, said it's hard to predict. While Witt said that there are currently no signs that a test is imminent, he added that North Korea is almost certain to carry out a nuclear test at some point. While we wait, the North Korean regime continues to talk up its nuclear program. The regime on Tuesday condemned U.S. President Barack Obama's visit to Northeast Asia and said it will strengthen its nuclear deterrent. The North's National Defense Commission said it has the capacity to carry out something bigger than a boost-efficient nuclear weapon test or a new intercontinental ballistic missile launch, and that the regime would not dismantle the program under any circumstances. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
A North Korea expert in China has also put forth his forecast on Pyongyang's fourth nuclear test. Yang Shiwi, a research fellow from the China Institute of International Studies, says North Korea will conduct a fourth nuclear test sooner or later. He said resuming the stalled six-party talks on Pyongyang's denuclearization and giving aid to the country is the only way to prevent North Korea from following through on its threat. The Beijing-based expert also added that he expects North Korea to conduct even more nuclear tests in the future, as the regime has no intention of giving up its nuclear program. South Korea's defense ministry has said North Korea is prepping for a fourth test, but it's still not clear if Pyongyang is just faking the buildup to one. Plans to establish a memorial paying tribute to the victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement are reaching an advanced stage in Washington. An official speaking on behalf of a group of Korean American societies in the U.S. says preparations began 2 years ago and funds have been raised to buy the rock that will be used for the statue. They added the monument could be set up as early as next month. When the statue is established, surviving comfort women, officials from the Korean Council for Women drafted for military sexual slavery, and Korean citizens living in the district are expected to commemorate the establishment. The first memorial statue in the U.S. was established in New Jersey in 2010. And shifting gears to some economic news, Korea's industrial output rebounded in March on the back of strong exports of automobiles and computer chips. Concerns linger, however, on the impact that the sunken ferry disaster might have on the economy in the coming months. Our Hwang Jae reports.
Korea's industrial output last month dismissed worries that the nation's economy might not be recovering as many had hoped. Statistics Korea said Wednesday that the nation's industrial output rose 0.9% in March from the previous month, following 2 straight months of decline. The agency attributed the gain in industrial output, which includes production in the mining, manufacturing, and gas industries, to strong exports of automobiles and semiconductors. It added that most sectors, including retail, sales, and facilities investment, performed better than the previous month. The Bank of Korea data also showed that business sentiment among Korean manufacturers is on a moderate pace of recovery. The index, which gauges the assessment from manufacturers on current business conditions, came in at 82 this month, up from 81 in March. Although a reading below 100 still means that pessimists outnumber optimists, the reading for April marked the 3rd straight month of strengthening business confidence. While concerns remain over whether the improvement will continue in the coming months with the sunken Sewol-ho ferry disaster hurting consumer sentiment, Nomura Securities believes the disaster will have a limited impact on the economy. The Japanese financial group kept its growth forecast for Asia's 4th largest economy for this year unchanged at 4%. Hwang Jae, Arirang News.
The government is putting its foot down over massive debt and excessive benefits at public organisations. New reform measures order wide-scale changes with specific goals that must be reached. If they aren't, the CEOs of the organisations could find themselves out of a job. Song Ji-son reports.
Public organizations in Korea have long been criticized for their ballooning debts and excessive employee benefits, and the government is determined to end such practices. They finalized a plan to sell off their non-core assets, slash exorbitant benefits, and streamline the overall business structure. As the first step to overhaul nearly 300 public institutions, the finance minister has ordered them to reduce their debt by some $50 billion over the coming years. Their goal is to lower the combined debt level of these organizations to 187% by 2017, down 34 percentage points from 2012. The government will conduct an interim evaluation of their debt reduction efforts in the second half of this year. If the organization's progress is deemed unsatisfactory, their CEOs could be replaced and the salaries of their employees frozen. Welfare benefits for employees could also be axed. Welfare spending at the institutions will be slashed by an average of $700 per person a year, down a quarter from last year. The measures are part of a 3-year economic innovation plan announced by President Park Geun-hye in February to normalize the public sector. 송지선, Arirang News.
The world's 2 leading smartphone makers are reaching the end of another court battle. Samsung Electronics and Apple made their closing arguments to a jury in California on Tuesday in a patent infringement case with billions of dollars at stake. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Apple Incorporated and Samsung Electronics have made their final arguments at a $2 billion trial over patent infringement in the U.S. state of California. The two sides were each given 2 hours to make their final cases on Tuesday. Apple's lawyer Harold McElhinney told the jury that Samsung had become the world's leading seller of smartphones by willfully and intentionally copying the iPhone maker's features. Samsung's lawyer Bill Price said that Samsung's success was based on providing the best hardware for Android and that the features under fire were already developed and included in Google's independently developed platform. Price said Apple wasn't even using 3 of the 5 patents it raised in the complaint. He said Samsung could not copy something from the iPhone if it wasn't featured in the iPhone at the time. Apple claims some Samsung devices, including the Galaxy S3, infringed on 5 of its patents, including on features like the slide to unlock function and automatic spell corrects. Samsung filed a counterclaim that some of the Apple's devices, including the iPhone 5, infringed upon 2 of its patents concerning Apple's video chatting service called FaceTime and the way in which Apple's devices retrieve and organize digital images. Apple is asking for nearly $2.2 billion in damages from Samsung, who in turn has asked for more than $6.2 million from Apple. Samsung was ordered to pay damages of $929 million to Apple in their first trial over dueling claims of patent infringement. Both companies appealed, and the decision has since moved up to a higher court. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Unionized workers at the Korean unit of Citibank are in talks to stage a walkout in protest of the bank's plans to shut nearly a third of its local branches as a restructuring and cost-cutting measure. Over 3,000 Citibank workers will hold a vote on whether to strike later on this Wednesday. If they agree, workers will initially go on a partial strike, but they'll switch to a full strike if the bank refuses to enter talks. Citibank Korea announced last week that it would shut more than 50 branches by the end of this year. If the strike goes ahead, it will be the first in the local banking sector since workers at Standard Chartered Bank walked out in 2011. Korea's ancient mountain fortress, Hansansong Fortress, is likely to be added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in June. The Cultural Heritage Administration says UNESCO's advisory panel, the International Council on Monuments and Sites, recently evaluated the historic mountain wall and recommended it be given World Heritage status. With the recommendation, Hansansong Fortress is almost certain to be added to the UNESCO list at the 38th meeting of the World Heritage Committee in Doha, Qatar in mid-June. The strategic defense fortress is more than 1,000 years old and is located southeast of Seoul. The Heritage Administration says the fortress was recommended for its historical representation of military architecture and city planning in ancient Asia. Time now for a look at the international headlines we're following at this hour, and for that we connect live to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news center.
Now, Eunice, the movements by pro-Russian forces on the ground show no sign of slowing down as they've taken over another key government post.
Right, and as Kiev seems to be losing its grip on local law enforcement. The latest seizure happened in Luhansk, one of the largest cities in eastern Ukraine, and geographically speaking, just 32 kilometers from the Russian border. A provincial government headquarters there was stormed by thousands of activists with iron rods on Tuesday, and regional police reportedly did nothing to stop them. And later that night, gunmen armed with automatic weapons and stun grenades forced themselves
themselves into the headquarters of the region's police. This as the self-declared Donetsk People's Republic has vowed to stage a referendum vote next month before the state's presidential elections. Interim President Alexander Turchinov criticized the local police for their inaction and, quote, criminal treachery. This as Interior Minister Arsen Avakov told the BBC that presidential elections may not be able to take place in all regions due to the unrest. And it has been more than 2 weeks since Boko Haram Islamists kidnapped 234 girls in the dead of the night from their dormitories in Chibok, Nigeria, and patience is running thin for the families and the community. Authorities say 3 rounds of rescue attempts have failed. There are unconfirmed eyewitness reports that the teenage girls have been married off to insurgents. Others say they have been taken out of the country. Officials have said that 52 managed to escape on their own. The unresolved mass abduction has captured the hearts of a nation mired in a 5-year insurgency. And on this Wednesday, activists are planning a million women march in the capital city of Abuja to demand the girls' rescue. A number of tornado warnings have expired as the U.S. folds into Tuesday night, though some storm risks remain in the south and the east coast. The hardest hit states of Mississippi and Alabama still stand in the projected path of the monster weather system that has spawned dozens of tornadoes. At least 35 people have been killed in the severe storms that stretched across 6 states and that have persisted since Sunday local time. Tens of thousands were left without power Tuesday, with the worst of the outages reported in parts of Alabama and Georgia. And on to a different type of storm. The owner of the Los Angeles Clippers has been banned from the NBA for life. Donald Sterling was also fined $2.5 million for racist comments he made to his then-girlfriend, whom he criticized for associating with, quote, black people. The dialogue was captured in an audio file and revealed by celebrity news website TMZ, instigating a firestorm of outrage. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said he was personally distraught by the incredibly offensive racist statements confirmed to be from Sterling, and that he would do everything he can to press the 80-year-old to sell the team he's owned since the early 1980s. The press conference was held 8 hours before the Clippers were to take on the Golden State Warriors in their first round playoff series.
I'm Lee Ji-hyun with the latest weather update for Jindo and around the country. The weather conditions in Jindo have improved today. The winds and waves should be calmer than yesterday, but the currents in the water remain strong. The spring tide period, a period during which currents are at their strongest, began yesterday, and this will last until Friday. And as for the other parts of the nation, we can expect similar readings as yesterday, only a tad warmer. And depending on which region of the country you are in, it could be partly sunny, cloudy or rainy, as between 5 to 20 millimeters of precipitation is expected in Gyeongsang-Namdo province, and sporadic showers are in store for the rest of the southern regions. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in Seoul will rise to 21, Daegu will peak at 19, while Gwangju and Busan climb to 20 and 18 respectively. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju will reach 19. Daejeon peaks at 21, and Dokdo should see a high of 17, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 10. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world.
And those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Mark and I'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Thank you for watching.